I'll be back again, and I'm going to introduce Mr. Ken Percival. He's been here ago, but a long time ago. Welcome back.
Good morning.
It's good to have you, Ken.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
And I know that you've got a new novel coming out, right?
Yeah, Catalyst, the novel. It's
Catalyst.
And so imagine for a moment that you're a dictator in a country that the people are suddenly have an uprising. What do you do, right? That's the question. What do you do? And so you call a lifeline. And so that's what this character in the book does. He called a lifeline. It's an ex of his. They had a son together. And the tagline to the novel is basically the idea of it is that it's about I'm at a loss of the words now.
You caught my disease.
But so the idea is that this dictator is facing to go into self-exile, and the son was detached from both the mom and the father. So the child had a very startling childhood, and so he's out for revenge. And so it's a story of unlikely redemption.
Oh, I like redemption. I usually put it in there somewhere for the bad characters.
Yeah, and so it's taking a few of the characters and trying, as the reader has a chance to delve into the story, is to help them feel whether or not one that character is has redeeming qualities, and so it's a mixture of this idea that this character Bo, who was the past dictator, is being handled by an ex relationship and is facing a lot of challenges because the tables have been sort of turned. Is the ex is putting the pinch on him and kind of making him feel for his past sins, possibly.
No kidding.
And so it really dives into kind of taking current events but twisting them around and writing a story in a style that is short screenplay scenes.
Wow. That sounds exciting. And did you bring a book today?
And so the book is available through BellevueBooks.com.
Oh, okay.
And it's a downloadable book, so it's electronic.
Oh, good.
And it's available through like Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And some of the local bookstores, the Book Nook has it. They're over on First Street here in Fresno. So hard copy of some of the books I've written are available there.
That'd be great. That's great. Well, tell me more about this book. What got you started on that subject?
Yeah. So as I write what I do is I kind of evolve from one story into another, and a lot of it's based on the characters, kind of unearthing these characters, thinking to a little bit of what I've heard other authors talk about. Is they talk a lot about writing from the seat of their pants, kind of Stephen King talks about in his memoir about on writing, talks about the idea that he's down in his basement typing away, and it's kind of like being an archaeologist in a way of you're kind of unearthing these ideas. And he talks about having this little grumpy old cigar-smoking muse on his shoulder. And it's not exactly like that for me, but the idea is that as a character comes about, you start to form what do they look like. What do they sound like? That's a really big piece of it, is what is that particular character, what can you convey through the dialogue? What can you convey about their description? And I think that's really important about any writing.
Oh, of course it is. If the characters aren't real, you don't get involved.
Right.
You just go right past it.
And that's what I've tried to do, is even though it's a fictional version of current events, is to try to be able to create that character that shares the emotions, that shares some of the thinking. And so I try to cast a lot of some of the thought that character is posing at that particular moment in time.
Right.
And kind of trying to do a backstory without really doing that.
Well, people don't think about all the decisions you have to make. No matter what you're doing, there's always so many decisions. And, of course, in a book, you got 20 times more decisions to make. So
yeah, and with this story, so the Catalyst, the novel, at the end of the book, I've started the next story, which is called Double Helix. And so Double Helix kind of takes current events from, you've probably heard of you think about the Testtube baby. and that's
yeah.
something that concept began long ago. And now it's kind of morphed into the designer baby. We have the ability now to be able to do things with genetics to be able to take away and add traits. So Double Helix is a story a little bit about that. It's about this gentleman who's a Rhodes Scholar. He finds himself in the position that his genetic makeup has benefits to it. And so they're able to sequence his genes, and a very wealthy benefactor decides she wants a designer baby. And so she finds two donors, combination that ends up happening to make kind of a fountain of youth gene.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
And so it picks up towards the end of Catalyst, and then you get to right into the next story of Double Helix.
Well, that's exciting for you. But you're doing a separate books. I did my books all together in a group, but you're just doing almost the same thing. You're continuing a story, but you have a new light every time.
A blending into a brand new plot. And so the plot thickens in Double Helix. I didn't do a lot of kind of murder mystery, but it's kind of almost going into that murder mystery format.
Wow, that's great. Tell me, when did you start thinking you wanted to be a writer?
I can think back to in school, writing out characters.
Wow.
Going back to 3rd and 4th grade, would have projects to do, whether it be working on poetry, but a short story was something that it was always would be something I would work on. And so over time, over the past 10 years, I've been working with Bellevue Books so that I can publish and get the works out there. Ebooks has been such a different way to think about publishing.
Yeah.
It's a big business, $1 billion every year in ebooks. People can instantly get the work, whether it be on their iPad or whatever device that they have now. So it's pretty incredible that this is a format that's out there. And for me, being an independent writer, somebody that doesn't have a whole lot of big buck backing behind him, it's great because I can see other indie artists out there that are doing the same thing, and they're able to get a share of that $1 billion business.
Wow, that is exciting. I'm going to have to figure that out myself.
Yeah, and a little earlier we were talking, sharing a little bit about some of where it came from. Is my stepdad has written a lot of books, and his name is Paul Shanley, and he's taken a lot of story from his personal experience, and so he wrote a story about the chickens of San Juan Bautista, and that was a place that he frequented often, and he was always get a kick out of the chickens, and so he put a voice to the chickens with a visitor from Maine, with a tourist from Maine, and so he tells this story of this whole organization about how the chickens organized to get recognized by the city council. It's a very funny little story, and that's also available on ebook through the BellevueBooks.com.
Bellevue Books, so I'll have to look into that. I'm on my husband has Kindle, and he's to a bed now. He's in a bed all the time. So these Kindles are just his savior, practically, that he has something that he can pick up and read.
It's nice because you have the ability to search out. You don't have to go to a library to look for titles that look appealing. You type in a title, you search something that you have an interest in, and you'll find it.
Yeah.
And so with all those, with the electronic book format, it's pretty amazing. Although there's a lot of people that like to hold a book in their hand.
Oh, yeah, and I do. I like to. But what I was going to say what you just said, because then I'd get it back again.
Yeah, so a lot of people like to hold the book in their hand, like a paperback or hardcover.
Yeah, I was thinking that somebody told me if you're going into Kindle, you want to get your name towards the first, because people maybe don't. That's maybe what's causing my book of trouble, The Saga. They're not getting down there. I'm going to have to figure some way to...
Well, I really like the book that you have here, the children's book that you have.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later.
Allie's turn.
Yeah.
And that's Allie's, A of the alphabet, so you're right up front with that.
Hey, that's right. Good. I think you brought something today, too, didn't you?
Yeah, so just a little reminder for every time you have a cup of coffee, so a little coffee mug that you have over there.
Oh,
and with
yes,
the website.
Yes.
And so there's the Bellevue Books and then Art of Story. And so there's a little bit behind the Art of Story. It's this idea that there are so many people out there that are independent writers, and so they have a story to tell. It might be as simple as if you're on social media like Facebook or Instagram, you'll see photos or memes. And in a way, that's very much a story. They're creating a story just as you would think with when we discovered the cave drawings. And that was kind of the first, if you think about it, that was the really first step of people communicating with each other, drawing bones or the drawings that we found early on.
Right.
And it could have been a map, it could have been warnings, but it was really that first step in storytelling. You jump ahead a little bit down the road, you get the printing press and the Gutenberg press for the Bible.
Speeds everything up.
And so, instead of having kingdoms of scribes, the printing press could reproduce so much so quickly.
That's for sure.
And now you imagine that you've got all of these different people that are putting together stories, and it's a matter of in thin air almost. From thin air, you can grab a story.
Yeah, I know, but what is so exciting that you can now publish a book yourself. It may never go anywhere because you don't know how to marketing it, but you could still go in and have a book, a beautiful book.
Well, it's a good segue into how you are able to do a book trailer. And so there's a book trailer that's available for Catalyst, and I think we're going to get a chance to be able to take a look at that right now.
Oh, okay. Oh, good.
This is absolutely a fiction story. It's aimed at suspense and drama, and then going into leading up into double Helix. So you take a perspective of a dictator that has all of a sudden lost the wealth and the power.
And a lot of them do.
Yeah. And so it's this self-exile concept that he's now subjecting himself to his own behavior. And so he's got a family that he's come upon. And so it really is taking current events, thinking about what's happening in Asia and, what are the possibilities.
Right. Oh my gosh, that sounds exciting. I just think I wish you had the book to show today, but next time you come in, you're going to do that, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, yep.
So nobody in your close family, just your stepfather?
Right. My stepdad has done a lot of different books, a lot from his perspective of he's a big Allagash fan, which in Maine is a area of wilderness connected lakes. And so many folks in Maine, or even throughout the Northeast, will go to the Allagash and take canoes and boats, and they'll go down rapids. And so he's done a book called A Girl to Run the River With. And that book is based on a story of him taking his daughter Sarah through the Allagash and really kind of dramatizing how that all is. And you can imagine, you go out in the wilderness, there's the restrooms are the pits.
If they have any.
Right, yeah. And so it's tent and porting the canoe from one place to another where there's just not enough water to run that.
Oh, gosh.
And so some really great stories. Another one that he had come up with is called Burn the Witch. And this took place in Bangor and Bucksport. And it's based on a statue that if you ever visit Bucksport, Maine, there's a statue that you can see this leg that appears on the statue. And there's a whole story about Captain Buck.
Wow.
And so he created a lot of stories that were sort of historical fiction and kind of going back in time.
I think that's very interesting to do, because otherwise there's just something standing there. And it's wonderful when somebody brings it to life by giving it some kind of a history or something like that.
And so he was somebody that was educated. His master's degree in education, so he taught fifth grade for the longest time. And he was somebody that really was able to connect to education concepts. And one of the things that he had done, that he found that he was able to help a lot of students with. In the 5th grade, that was the primary category that he taught. And he came up with a system to deal with fractions, to show people how to work with fractions. And that's, one of those that's one of those concepts that's out there that people hear fractions and they run in the other direction. And if you're going to give me a piece of pie, I want the biggest fraction piece of pie, right? And so he had some very good concepts on being able to how to get people to understand how fractions worked. But then he also translated that to storytelling, of being able to use to imagine something that could happen down the road too.
And is he still living?
So he recently passed. He passed in December of this year.
Oh gosh!
And but he leaves behind all the storytelling that he did, and a lot of folks that he's worked with over the years in helping them understand concepts, and just imagining that when you have somebody that's teaching 5th grade, you're influencing a lot of a person's life, and
that's for
giving them a great background to start with.
It's just that sometimes people think that because a child is small, that they have small thoughts in their mind, but that's not true. They pick everything the time they're in their mother. They're learning. They just can constantly keep learning, and you can expect good things to come. Something very surprising to come out of a child.
Yeah, no, and it's very true. I think about the concept of the Testtube Babies and designer babies. It's a very provocative topic. It's something that there's a little bit of intellectual piece to it.
Scary to me.
But then it's also it's an ethical consideration, as you know, at some point down the road, that if it's not already being done, that you can give a baby blue eyes, or you can choose black.
I don't think it's good.
And so it's one of those scary topics, but it's something that people have to think about. And storytelling is a good way to be able to break the ice with it, to be able to get people to think about. So what are the consequences of those sorts of decisions?
What scares me about that is that it means if you are trying to make your child some other way, that you're not approval of the child God gave you. And I don't see that that's a fair thing to do.
And this is all happening in the womb before the child even forms, right?
Unbelievable.
So we live in a very different place. I think back to in the world in the last 100 years, and in relevance to, like with my stepdad Paul Shanley, is he would constantly talk about he was a world of horse and carriages suddenly that was motorized.
Right.
And within the course of his lifetime of 84 years, he saw television come into play, cameras, radio, not necessarily in those order, but it was something that really the pace of change and industrialization and the way things happen, to be able to go from having all of a sudden a television in the home to being able to have whatever you want right in front of you almost.
It's unbelievable. It's mind-boggling, especially to older people. Wait a minute, slow down a minute.
Yes, yeah. And so it's exciting to kind of work with that and telling stories, whether it be going back in time a little bit, or just being able to take and predict where things are going to go down the road. Because even 5 years down the road, it's pretty amazing to think what we'll be doing. Will we be able to go in shopping and not have to worry about making a payment? It'll recognize who you are and know how to bill you.
Oh, I believe that. I used to say, there's not going to be, people wouldn't listen to me really. I always said, we're not going to go to work, and go to the house and go to work. We're going to do your work from your home, and everything's going to be, get rid of a lot of the buildings,
Yeah, what do we do with our time? That's a big thing. Right now, there's ideas about how people earn income, the idea of basic income, or I had read some articles that they had done these experiments in, I want to say the Netherlands, that they were providing people a base pay of maybe $1,000 a month, and then they would get to choose, what they would do with their time.
Wow.
And so you can really imagine stories taking off with that sort of thing, as it gives people the opportunity to think about art And so if they have a career that they focus on.
You got to do this book.
Yeah.
The one on that subject would be very, very interesting.
Yeah.
But of course, you have to write what you feel inside and what you feel is important
Yeah.
to other people.
Yeah.
You know, because we don't write just for ourselves. We write that it can share what we have with somebody else, right?
The storytelling, that's a piece of it. And, you know, I often go back to that concept of the art of story is that it's something that comes from every person that has been or will be.
That's right. Oh, it's wonderful. I'm so glad you came in today. And when you get a copy of that book, please, 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 please bring it in, will you?
Oh, thank you so much.
And I'm so glad to have you here.
Nice to talk with you
Okay,
today.
don't forget Catalyst.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, honey, thank you so much. I'll be right back.